But I had a real, I had some problem with a tumour I had in my neck. I had to get removed, and so for various reasons, I decided, you know what, I never retired. I just sort of moved away and got into the promoting side a little bit more with the ROH stuff, and then later TNA. So I'd had quite a few offers come back to, you know, from 1PW to XWA, IPW UK. Everyone has sort of made offers, and some of them are really good. But I've always had a really good relationship with Andy Quilden, and Andy came to my wrestling school when he was a kid, along with a guy called Dan Ambrose, and they didn't have the money to come to training. So they said, you know, like, we really want to come here, but we can't really afford it. So I said, well, listen, just if you can get here, then obviously you can, you know, I'll let you train for free. And it's gone, you know, it's worked really well in my eyes, because that's somebody who's gone on to do things. I've had a good relationship with Andy. I started, you know, using him on my show. So he talked me into doing the comeback. And people talk about the money. That it's not that I demanded a huge amount of money to do it. I said, if I'm going to do this, it means staying in the country a little bit longer. It means going back to the gym. It means, like, taking a lot of supplements, you know, because I'm a naturally big guy anyway, so that's a lot of protein I've got to consume. And tanning. So I'm not like someone that does this all the time. If I'm going to take 2 months out of my life, or, you know, 6 weeks or whatever, this is how much that is worth to me. So it's, you know, so to be honest, even though I got paid a ridiculous amount of money, it was a break even for me. It wasn't, you know, the extra time I had to stay in the country. So I did that. And then
can I just ask, were you happy with the match? I mean, how do you think it went?
Yeah, I mean, I did. My second book is already finished. And there's a whole chapter on the match itself, breaking it down piece by piece. And the main thing I sort of said that I was happy with my movement. You know, like, if you watch me back, I think even you said in the commentary, like, he hasn't lost a step or whatever. And I hadn't. My movement was actually better, but I really blew up. You know, like, and it wasn't fitness, it's nerves. When you blow up, it's nerves. I did my match with Yeston Reese recently, and we did like nearly 30 minutes. And Yeston's a big guy to be lugging around and vice versa. But before I went through the curtain, I said to myself, I am not going to blow up. And I didn't. It was fine. So I was happy with the match in some respects. But in others, you know, it left something. When I walked away, I thought, you know what? I could walk into a ring tomorrow and I could wrestle again. You had a real issue with wrestling. Could I do it again? Could I be half decent? You know, because I was never great before. But, you know, can I still fit? And I was happy with it, I think. I
mean, we'll move on to why it was going to be your last match in a minute, but it was dubbed as your final ever match in the UK.
No, it wasn't. Well, it was never dubbed as my final ever match in the UK. It was my final match before I went to India.
Right.
Because I don't, you know, it was going to be the last match before I went to India, and I was going to be in India for at least a couple of years. But a lot of people said, oh, it was your retirement match. It was never, ever stated anyway, it's my retirement match. But obviously I came back a lot quicker than I was supposed to. But I came back a lot quicker because I was in the country, and IPW, again, was left in a lurch, as you know, and I got a call on the morning of that show. So it was billed as my last match before India, and it was. So.
Okay, so let's talk about India then. Why were you going to India, and why did you come back sooner than you expected to?
Well, I really like the film Gandhi. So, no, I'm just joking. But I do really like the film Gandhi. But no, I've always had a desire to go to India anyway. And there was a lot more. I wanted to write. I was leaving wrestling for a bit to write a book, and I decided earlier in the year. My girlfriend at the time, last New Year's Eve, not the one just gone, the New Year's Eve before that, we shook hands and we were like, next New Year's Eve we'll be in India. So we'd sort of, I'd sort of committed that was what I wanted to do. And so I just wanted to take a break from Western society for a little bit. And then what happened, obviously I did the tour for TNA. That was a really successful tour, and I've really bought good credit with Dixie Carter and Andy Barton and all those people. So they said to me, would you like to be involved in being our liaise between, it'd be our guy for Europe and stuff. And Jeff Jarrett spoke to me a little about it as well. And I said, I'd love to, but I'm going to India. So it is bizarre that it was the best job in wrestling I've ever been offered. And TNA as a company, like the way a company works, I can't fault them in any way whatsoever. The way they treated me, like, it was amazing to get money paid on time, and bonuses, and so so I was really happy with it. So when I told them I was going, they said, that's really interesting. Book your ticket and we'll talk. It was a little bit cryptic. So I booked my ticket and they said, right, we've got this multi-million-dollar deal on the table in India, and we need a guy to go over there and run it for us, and none of our crew want to go. If you're going to be there, rather than, I was, because a few months before I was about to go, I started to get, I wouldn't say cold feet, but I was thinking, I don't know if I can be away from wrestling for that long. India's a big opportunity. I am good at what I do in terms of being able to find a niche market and work towards that niche market. And India's a massive niche market. The UK scene is like a gnat on an elephant's arse compared to the sheer number of people in India, 1.5 billion people, and a lot of those people, there's 8 men to every woman, and we all know that wrestling fans are predominantly men. It's a big market. So TNA had offered me this deal to go over there, and they said, look, rather than you go and set this up on your own, we'll fund you to set up a school, we'll put you on a salary, and you can be our guy for India. It sounded like a dream position. So I went there and I met with venues. I signed Mr. India, Verinder Singh, who's coming over here still shortly. I met with television networks, met with gyms, supplement companies, the whole shebang. The project was going to be enormous, and then it's funny because I was in doing radio interviews and stuff out there saying, I trained the only Asian from Britain to go to WWE, and I must have cursed Haid, because literally within 4 days of me saying it, he got released while I was in India. But yeah, it was going to be enormous. And then come the end of January, I was told that the network ESPN Star were going to shelve it for 12 months. So by that point, it was like, well, I can stay here and get money back as myself and try and do this. But I'd already encountered some real, I wouldn't say hostility. I mean, there's a little bit of hostility, but I realised that I would need to go back home and regroup, because India is it showed me the best and worst sides of life. And being one of the only white people for when I was in Punjab, I was one of only 3 white people I saw in more than 2 months. You've got a massive pound note on your head walking around. So I decided to come back for a little bit.
So when you came back, presumably there wasn't anything waiting for you on the table. I mean, I'm wondering how your involvement in the new FWA came about. I mean, was it your idea to start it back up, or did someone call you?
No, it was what happened. Well, I guess, do you mind me backtracking a little bit? So just before I left, one thing that I always get told all the time, and I used to think it was just people sort of, feeding my ego or trying to get in with me, or, like I was saying to somebody earlier, no matter what people say about me, if somebody comes up and says, look, I really want to go to WWE, or I really want to go to TNA or ROH or wherever, and I believe that person's good enough, I will get them that job. I will do as much as anyone can to get them that job. And there may be people who have stronger links with one company, but as a whole, I either know people there, or I know the management there, or, that company, I think TNA felt pretty bad about the India things, to be honest, and they didn't leave me in the lurch in any way. It wasn't their decision, but it was what it was. So people always say to me, it's not the same since FWA's gone down the pan, and let me just say, but first of all, the old FWA did not go out of business. That's a massive misconception. Didn't go out of business. I had 3 desires, and you can go back, you can find radio interviews from 2002 before we even did Uprising 1. Here was my 3 desires that I had. I wanted to run a wrestling company that was cool. I wanted to get British wrestling on television, and I wanted to run the Coventry Sky Dome, which was really random. I actually named that building. I left after British Uprising 1, which was British Uprising 3, sorry, which was at the Coventry Sky Dome, just after we'd had a year on television with a product that was really cool. But it hadn't brought me any income. Now, we'll talk about myself and money and wrestling in a second, because I know that's probably one of the things that people, But, at that point, I'm 24, 25, and I need to start thinking about seriously, I got in a relationship with a girl who, was older than me. She was a graphic designer, and she's like, "What are you doing?" So at that point, FWA never went out of business. It was handed to other people, and it was decided, look, it's probably best to change the name. So when people say it went out of business, it's not really true. So I always get people say to me, "Oh, it's such a shame it went out of business. There's nowhere for us wrestlers to sort of aim to get to." There's some good promotions, and 1PW have done some really cool stuff. XWA, I think, is a brilliant promotion. IPW has done some awesome stuff as well, but there's not a universally. Back in the day, FWA was, the Japanese and the Americans and other guys in Europe. FWA was the place to be. It just, before I came here, actually, a new venue that wants to bring us in said, "Have you got any videos?" So I sent them some YouTube links, and I was watching the music videos for Uprising 2 and 3. There still hasn't been anything like that. No matter what anyone says, it was way ahead of its time. So I was backstage at the match with Martin, and a lot of guys were saying the same sort of thing. And I've covered this in an interview before, and I know I'm going a bit long, but a lot of people saying this, there's nothing to aim for, blah, blah, blah. So I did the match with Martin, then the following month there was another show, and Kelly Adams, female wrestler, used to train. I'd given my speech at my end of the match saying we should all work together to make British wrestling good again. And then she heard that speech, as did Tony Simpson, right, who was in the crowd. And he decided, you know what, I want to help British wrestling get good again. I'm going to promote, right? And she thought, I want to wrestle again. So what happened was I agreed, okay, I'll come to your last match because you came to mine.